that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, if you believe everything you read, you'd be imagining that today was pretty much D-Day when it came to Russia and Ukraine. Frantic 48 hours to save Europe was one of the headlines. Well, Wednesday's here now. Got to be honest though, some of the press have got a little bit distracted with Prince Andrew's antics. So what is the latest? We'll have a bit of an explainer on that. And almost 80% of police officers feel like we, the public, don't respect them. Are they right? And if so, why? And domestic violence is often discussed, but did you know 1/10 of cases are children attacking their own parents? What on earth is going on? And should schools be able to ban meat, not just from their canteens, but also from your pack-ups too? And finally, something that has got me a little bit hot under the collar. And if you watch my programme, you'll probably know why, but breaking news that's just happened. England, Scotland, of course, and Northern Ireland have followed Wales in announcing that they too are rolling out the COVID vaccines to healthy 5 to 11-year-olds. Given that we're reaching the tail end of this pandemic and Omicron is so much milder, why on earth is this necessary? We'll have all that to come, but first, the latest news headlines.
I'm Polly Middlehurst with your top stories. And as you've been hearing, children aged 5 to 11 years old in England will be offered a COVID-19 vaccination from April. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, made the decision following guidance from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. Previously, only at-risk youngsters in that age group were able to have the jab. The vaccine will also be available for that age group in Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. Dr. Veena Babu told GB News she believes more research is needed.
As a GP, I would still recommend all parents to do your own research, read around the topic, look at the sources, and once you feel confident, only then put your child forward to get the vaccination. On one hand, you could look at it as getting the vaccination can help build their immune systems for when they grow up, so they'll have a better chance of fighting the vaccination. But I still think more data needs to be collected before we can confidently say and recommend this to everybody.
Dr. Babu. Well, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has confirmed the UK will double the number of troops in Estonia and send more tanks and armed fighting vehicles as part of the NATO deployment to Eastern Europe. That comes after NATO tasked its commanders to work out details of sending forces amid fears Russia may invade Ukraine. NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg confirmed today the alliance has seen no signs that support Russia's claims that it is pulling back its troops from the border.
So far, we do not see any sign of de-escalation on the ground. No withdrawals of troops or equipment. This may, of course, change. However, what we see today is that Russia maintains a massive invasion force ready to attack.
Jens Stoltenberg. Here, police searching for a sex offender who escaped from an open prison in Lincolnshire 3 days ago have released a new image of him. It shows Paul Robson without his distinctive braided beard. Officers are also saying his facial hair could be lighter in colour now too. The 56-year-old, described as a particular danger to women and children, was sentenced to life for attempted rape and indecent assault. The Prince of Wales's charity is being investigated by the Metropolitan Police over allegations of cash for honours. In a statement, the Met said the investigation relates to media reports claiming offers of help were made to secure honours and citizenship for a Saudi national. Prince Charles's team have stated publicly that His Royal Highness was not aware of any links between donations to his foundation and any honours. A Metropolitan Police officer has been found guilty of misconduct in public office. PC Adnan Arib met a 15-year-old girl in a park and sent dozens of text messages to another 16-year-old girl. The 45-year-old was convicted on 2 counts of misconduct at Southwark Crown Court and will be sentenced next month. The energy regulator Ofgem is bringing in new rules requiring suppliers to offer existing customers the same deals as new ones. It's going to end the practice of cut-price deals being subsidised by existing customers on higher rates. It follows the announcement that the energy price cap will rise by 54% in April, with Ofgem saying they'll monitor how effective the measure is before considering whether to make it permanent. And weather news today, the Met Office is warning 90-mile-an-hour winds brought by Storm Dudley could pose a danger to life. Amber weather warnings are in place across central and southern parts of Scotland and the north of England. ScotRail stopped almost all of its services today amid fears of falling trees and blowing debris. Her Majesty the Queen has held her first in-person audience since a COVID scare 6 days ago. She was meeting the incoming and outgoing Defence Service Secretaries. The 95-year-old monarch indicated she was having trouble moving and was standing with a walking stick. It follows Prince Charles testing positive with COVID after seeing his mother last week. And finally, astronomers have discovered a supermassive black hole hiding in a ring of cosmic dust. They've released this artist impression of images taken by the European Southern Observatory's new Very Large Telescope. Scientists say it's helped give them new insights into the history of our Milky Way. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company tonight. My panel, we've got Peter Whittle, who's the director of the New Culture Forum, Laurie Laybone-Langton, who's the environmental policy researcher, and filmmaker Kerry Dingle. And I'm very grateful for Kerry tonight because already she's done some good. You've reminded me that I forgot a topic, didn't I, in my intro to the show? I forgot to tell you something that we're discussing. Luckily, Kerry reminded me what it is. It's work from home. Do you work from home? There was a lot of talk, wasn't there, that actually you might not be that productive. Well, apparently you are. I have to say as well, you know, on this show, you know the drill. It's not just about us and our thoughts. It's about you at home as well and your thoughts. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. I want all your thoughts on all the topics tonight. In particular, I'm fascinated by the breaking news that's just happened about the kids, healthy kids, as young as 5 years old, will now be eligible for the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. What do you make to that? You've already started emailing me about this. One of you said to me, let me find your name actually, if I can. You've emailed me already and said, well, it's all about, there you go, Lewis. You've said, well, if we don't get our children jabbed, what about travelling on holiday, on the summer holidays, going abroad? Goodness me, I mean, really? Is that what we do? We give our children medical interventions without long-term safety data so that we can go on holiday? Really? Anyway, like I said, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, let's talk, shall we, about Russia? Because you might remember a couple of days ago, it was all talk, wasn't it, about the crucial 24, 48 hours, etc. Wednesday was the day. Speaking in NATO in Brussels, Ben Wallace said that the number of troops was increasing in key areas. and contrary to reports that he's seen no evidence of a withdrawal. Got to say, all gets a bit confusing, doesn't it? Why don't we talk to our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, good evening to you. Tell us, if you will, what is the latest in Ukraine?
Yes, I think a lot of people have been slightly confused by the warnings that the US put out in recent days about today being a potential deadline in terms of military action on the part of Russia. I mean, what they were effectively saying is that today would be the point at which Vladimir Putin would have all of the required forces that those forces would need, so that from now on, basically, if he wanted to launch some kind of invasion, then he is in a position to do that. Doesn't necessarily mean that he would choose now or indeed any time. Of course, Russia maintains that it has no intention of launching any kind of invasion against Ukraine, which begs the question as to why so many troops are on the border of that country. Now, of course, Russia as well, just in the last 24 hours, has said that it has begun pulling back troops. Now, there was today a meeting of NATO. The NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that from NATO's point of view, they have seen no evidence that Russia has been pulling back in any meaningful way. Quite the opposite, in fact. We've been told that 130,000 troops are massed on the border from Crimea through eastern Ukraine up to Belarus. They now believe that actually 150 military personnel are on that border. There are also Russian naval assets in the Crimea and, of course, a very significant Russian Air Force presence as well. All the firepower that is required if, as I say, Vladimir Putin did decide to launch a military action against his neighbour.
Mark White, thanks for bringing us up to speed with the latest there. Now, let's focus on things a bit closer to home, shall we? Because I want to talk to you about the police. I wonder, do you respect the police? David has been in touch already from Birmingham saying, Michelle, I've lost full respect for the police. He says policing has become too political and far too work in practice. What do you think to that? The reason that I ask is because a study says that more than 1 in 10 officers claim that they're on the brink of resigning. More than 90% of them do not feel respected by the government, and 80% of them do not feel respected by us, the public. Kerry Dingle, your thoughts on this?
Well, part of me wants to say, well, my heart bleeds. I mean, it must be crap for individual officers, obviously, but I think given the role that the police have played, especially over the last 2 years, vis-à-vis lockdown and restrictions, yes, they're following out orders, but have been ludicrous. The things that they've prevented people from sitting on benches, they've gone after people over their Twitter accounts. You know, meanwhile, getting burglars has been next to, 0%. It's been so tiny. And then there's been all these horrendous cases, in terms of murders, and alongside the, nasty messaging that's been going on. It's not impressive at all.
But have you lost respect for them, though, Kerry?
I'm not sure that I ever had huge respect, but maybe that's because I don't agree with a lot of the laws that they're meant to enforce. From the miners' strike onwards, my faith has not been in the British Bobby.
Well, Peter Whittle, I don't think you're happy with that response, are you?
Well, I can quite understand, actually, Michelle, why the public have lost confidence in the police, and indeed they have. I mean, one of the main reasons, and I had a lot to do with particularly with the Metropolitan Police, because when I was on the London Assembly, I was on the Police and Crime Committee, and they have become very political, very politically correct, to use that rather quaint term now. And people have got the drift of this. It's much more now about enforcing certain ideological positions. And I think that what really did it for many people, including me, was last year there seemed to be real political differentiation in the way in which they went about policing protests. So you had police sort of taking the knee to BLM. And, then you had, anti-lockdown protesters or whatever being roughed up and this kind of thing. Also with Extinction Rebellion, the police dancing around with them, seemingly being very, very soft, not having a grip on law and order. I remember one of the worst things was when some Extinction Rebellion people got right to the cenotaph on Remembrance Day, not the Sunday, on the actual Remembrance Day. And the weakness shown by the police, so they let them stay there for something like 20 minutes. And this kind of thing is what makes people incredibly lacking in confidence in the police. They are meant to be a police force, not a bunch of social workers.
I've got to say, I wouldn't be a police officer for love nor money, Laurie, because I don't even think I'm brave enough, actually, quite frankly. These guys and girls, they run towards the kind of danger that would have most of us running for the hills. They don't get paid huge amounts of money. They get awful abuse. This whole kind of hashtag ACAB, which I won't say what it stands for because it's only tea time, but many of you will know what it means. These guys, they get dogs abuse. Would you be a police officer? Do you respect them?
I do respect the police, and I think they do an extraordinarily difficult job. I think there are a number of issues that we address there around the failures of police leadership in the context of the events of the last few years, and I think those are serious, and I think that the Bobby on the beat has been let down at times by police leadership, issues of racism, how they handled protests around the horrendous events, attitude towards women and so on. There's also I don't think, the situation with COVID where they just couldn't win. They're being asked to impose laws and then it was very difficult to work out how best to do that. But the general situation in this country is that the police do an extraordinary job in keeping us safe. And it's tragic to hear the thoughts of the average police officer in these surveys. And it's the result of over a decade of consistent underfunding in what is a key public service. We have had, I think it's an 18% pay reduction in real terms since 2010. And then, of course, recently you've had the high costs of living as well. So police officers are getting squeezed from both directions in a very difficult time for policing. And it hammers home to us that the pandemic has hammered home to us that we rely on core public services. And if we don't invest in them, then the people that provide us, who provide those services and run towards danger, will end up having to lead. And that is tragic, and we need to make sure we're investing in
Can I just say, how does lack of money make you a good or bad police officer worthy of respect? Either, you uphold the law, as Peter has said, properly and without discrimination, which is not what we've seen, or you do a rubbish job. And why don't police themselves or the Police Federation or the Council of Police speak out about some of these ludicrous roles the police are expected to fulfil, arresting old ladies for a poem with bad language in it?
But there's a difference between what police leadership is asking people to do and the laws that government are then imposing, and then what this survey is showing today, which is the experience of the average police officer. They are suffering under lower wages than they would have had back in 2010 and other issues like that. And we've got a difference between what leadership is doing in the police and then the experience of the average Bobby. And that is where the real problem lies, because we're going to lose fantastic officers, so we don't get the best people out in the streets. We're not going to get the level of protection we need, the community support officers who work closely with communities and so on. That's a core issue of investment, which I think is slightly related to the other issues of basically police strategy at the moment.
But I think, look, I would agree with what Karen says. It's not just about money. Where I would agree with you, yes, they have been cut back. In London, it got very, very bad. That came from actually a Tory administration, a Tory Home Secretary cut the police back. I do know about that, but it's not really the real problem. The reason people lose confidence or sympathy with, which they would usually have in terms of just, if it were just about money, is because they hear more and more, and quite rightly, because it's happening, about the police effectively turning into a kind of thought police. You have people being looked up, we had a big case, Harry Miller, recently. Police came along and said, we need to check your thinking, because he just liked a few tweets about the trans issue. And this sort of thing makes people this is straight out of, dare I say it, Orwell, actually. And people are very, very white, and rightly so. The problem is more than many of our institutions the police have been sort of gone through, if you like, with the woke agenda, and what used to be called political correctness. I would say they've been captured. It's almost a kind of left-wing thing. And so they no longer have confidence, actually, really, in what they're really meant to be doing. And I think that, therefore, people don't have confidence in them.
Well, I've got to say, my inbox is lit up like a pinball machine. It's like literally relentless. I'm getting so many emails on this topic. And I do feel like there is a sense, an overall sense, that many of you are writing in saying that you have lost respect for the police, and you're mentioning lots of the things that some of the panel have just been saying. You're mentioning things like what you're calling political correctness. You're talking about things like taking the knee, etc. Martin says, Michelle, what police? I can't even remember the last time I saw any police. Steve says, well, if they showed us a bit more respect when dealing with us, they might get a little bit more back. I have to say, I do think it's a bit of a shame to have lost respect for the police, because that is honestly a sentiment that when I read this article, I was thinking 80% of officers feel like they're not respected by the public. But actually, seeing some of your comments coming in, I don't think that seems far wrong, and I think it's a real shame, because I think that these guys, girls, whatever we're allowed to call them these days, they run towards danger. And I do wonder, lots of you that are writing in saying that you don't respect the police, if you had a problem, if you was in need, would you expect them to be there for you? Because I would suggest that you probably do. So I would find that interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Peter's desperate to come back. But no, you can't, because we're going to take a quick break, because tonight we're not messing around on Dewbs and Co. It's action-packed. We've got a lot to fit in. So I am going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about loads of different things. I want to talk about domestic abuse, working from home. I want to talk to you about schools. I want to talk to you about these kids' vaccines. Loads of stuff. So we're going to take a quick break. Before we do, actually, a sneaky peek of Friday's brand new programme with Patrick Christie's coming up as well.
Hello, mate. Send me to the studio, please.
How are you keeping? Busy?
I've got a brand new show coming on GBNews called The Friday Night Feast.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to take a new news angle on the week's biggest stories. Move it forward. I want to talk about what I think we should be talking about, not what we're being told that we have to. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. A brand new show right here on GB News, The Friday Night Feast, 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. with me, Patrick Christie's. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Oh, I've left my wallet in a cab.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Just a quick reminder, if you're listening to us tonight, who the panel is. We've got Peter Whittle, Director, New Culture Forum, Kerry Dingle, who's the filmmaker, and Laurie Lebon Langton, who is the environmental policy researcher. So many emails coming in on that police issue, and I thought to myself, why didn't I do a poll asking, do you respect the police or not? And this is the joys of modern technology, because do you know what I did in the break? I set one up. So if you are on Twitter, get over to my Twitter account at Michelle Dewbs and let me know, do you still trust and respect the police? I'll be reading out the results before the end of the show. Now, let's talk about working from home. I do have that ability, by the way, because sometimes when I do talk about working from home, I slightly cringe a little bit inside, because not everyone has what I would call the luxury to be able to do that. If you work in a supermarket, a factory, wherever, you won't be able to do that. So tell me, if you're at home, can you work from home? Is that what you've been doing today? Is that what you're supposed to be doing right now while you're sneakily watching Dewbs & Co? The reason I'm asking about this topic is because data suggests that worker productivity actually went up when we were working from home during the last few months of 2021. Output per hour overtook that of pre-pandemic levels for the first time. That is according to the ONS. Laurie Lebon Langton, what's your thoughts on this?
So people feared that for those that could work from home, that when they did, they would be, I don't know, distracted, or maybe some people would be lazy or something. But it looks like the data is showing us that that wasn't the case. And I think that that's a really interesting, quite positive moment for society. For many people, work wasn't working before the pandemic. People were stuck in a commute that may have been unnecessary, working in rubbishy offices, having to juggle childcare arrangements and so on. The fact that we've had the opportunity in tragic circumstances to explore a different approach to work, I think is a positive thing. And studies show that if we change the way we work, and maybe even work a bit less, it can lead to really positive outcomes for society, better for our health, as we're seeing here, potentially better for productivity and better for the environment.
Yeah, Peter, Laurie makes some good points there. Yeah. And I've got to say, I do always caveat this conversation, because I do realise that a lot of people are not in the position to be able to work from home. But there was a concern that actually people will be lazy bums. They wouldn't actually do what they're supposed to do. They'd clean out the fridge and down the back of the radiators rather than actually doing their spreadsheets. And that hasn't transpired.
Maybe not, but I feel very uncomfortable with this thing of working from home. I think there's a, dare I say it, a strong class element to this. I think, you know, that if you have a relatively nice surroundings and you've got quite spacious surroundings, well, what's not to like about it? I mean, it's great. What worries me about it is that particularly during the first stages of the pandemic, people were saying, isn't this great and everything? Yeah, sure, it's great if you don't have to go out and work, and we forget those people. And the problem is that whole ecosystems, whole economic ecosystems started to collapse because people did not have to go somewhere. Then the cafes or shops that relied on people going in started to close. I do not like what this is doing to society. I think in the long term as well, I don't think it's good for the mental health, actually. People are social beings, at least I believe they are, and they should intermingle. What about, you know, if you're all at home, what about young people coming into the workforce in a corporate situation? They can't judge anything. They don't know, they don't learn the culture of the place. It's all done, presumably, like down a line if you're all at home. It's so unsatisfactory. I think in the long term, people will say, actually, you know what, let's get back to what, you know, there's a reason we had it like that before.
Interesting. Kerry?
Well, first of all, I think on an economic level, the figures are quite misleading because they don't differentiate between productivity of people actually working from home and people not working from home. And if you think about what people are doing, well, first of all, you should recognise that productivity levels in Britain have been historically terrible for the last few decades. So it's any rise of whatever it is, 0.8% or 1.1% in the last quarter, are from a really low level. So it's rubbish because there hasn't been the massive investment. Innovation doesn't start at home. You can't work in a lab at home. You're not going to do great infrastructure projects at home. You're not going to innovate or be an engineer in your cupboard under the stairs. I mean, this is a nonsense in terms of transforming the economy, and the jobs we want are not going to come from home working. And Michelle and Peter are absolutely right. It's not a panacea. Yes, it might be nice if you're, got a nice bit of space to be from home and can juggle time with your kids. But 49% of people were not working from home and couldn't work from home and don't have the space and claimed it's hell on earth. And we are social beings that do better through collaboration, and that's how we're innovative. So I think we should get over this and give people a choice, yes, but recognise for the vast majority of people it's a nonsense.
Well, actually, as well, and you say it's a nonsense, but I would say kind of different story, but kind of semi-linked. When you force people to work from home, and yes, there's been choices to some of this, but in some instances, people had no choice but to work from home. I often do worry, should I say, about the impact on things like domestic abuse, because, if you've ever been in a situation of domestic abuse, you will know that often your respite it's going to school if you're a child, going to work if you're an adult. That is indeed if you're allowed to work, because often in domestically abusive relationships, they even stop you from doing that. But a study from the Home Office has found that 1/10 of domestic abuse cases involve children attacking their own parents. Now, I've got to be realistic here. When we say children, this is one of the factors here, is around kind of older children, if you like, being forced, in many cases, to stay at home longer because they basically can't afford their own property. So what we're talking about here is that kids that have been abusing their parents was on average 27 years old, largely male, and the victims of this, on average, are about 54. I mean, that kind of story, it shocked me, but it didn't surprise me, I guess, because if you do contain people so within their own homes, you are going to experience an increase in domestic abuse. To me, that's basics. But Peter, what's your thoughts in there?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember, you've got to remember that most people live in small conditions that will be considered small anyway, And I remember when the pandemic first started and everyone was locked down, I lived in Woolwich at the time. I was one of the lucky ones. I had a nice big place and all the rest. But I would walk for my exercise, we were allowed, if you remember. And I would walk through
an hour.
I would walk through Thamesmead, and you would see families, like they were now cooped up in these small flats. How people didn't go crazier, I don't know.
Well, I think some people did.
Yes. And so I think that, never again, sorry, I know this is not what you want to talk about, never again should we have that situation. I think never again should that be imposed.
Yeah, and Laurie, I do think actually some of the unintended consequences of this whole kind of enforced work from home situation, I think it is going to start to become clear that there was some devastating consequences to this. The whole kind of domestic abuse situation will be one of them.
Yeah, and it is tragic that that's the case. I think when it comes to working from home, I'm just for flexibility. And before we required people to come in, now I think we should have choice and a bit of flexibility, right? Hopefully it will be something that contributes less to tensions at home. A deeper issue here, as you're alluding to, is that people of that age, is not to excuse anyone's behaviour, but don't necessarily have the housing options that they did for the generation above them. And the piling up of generations in houses that just cannot support that kind of piling up of people, I'm not saying is an excuse for anyone's behaviour here, but maybe a wider factor that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I've got to say, Kerry, this kind of whole sentiment about parents being abused by their children, and obviously when I'm saying children, I'm not talking about a 2-year-old. I'm talking about, your bigger, stronger, probably adult children. This is a thing that happens. I think it's very rarely talked about. And if you're a parent in that situation, it must be incredibly difficult, because domestic abuse at the best of times brings with it a whole host of kind of shame, embarrassment, isolation. But to have your own child doing that to you must be, I hate to think what it must be like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a horrific thing to contemplate. It's evidently very real. Over, I think around 7,000 cases have been were part of this survey of the last year or two of people who are around average 27, attacking mostly women in their over 50. And I think that's really scary. But one of the interesting things, because they've also announced all this money today to help domestic abuse victims, but most of it is always about the woman should move out. The woman should leave. And really, in these situations, there has to be a situation where the police, rather than obsessing with Twitter, can enforce occupation orders, which are injunctions, basically, so that the 27-year-old is forced out and not allowed back in, so that women and their other kids and family are not estranged from their local community, friends, neighbours, schools and all the rest of it, because it's always the women should run. But I think you're right, Michelle, it's a terrible situation because you don't want to criminalise your own kid, even however objectionable and horrendous they've been. So it's a very, very difficult situation, but one that needs... women need to feel they can go to the police over something like this, and it has to be acted on, absolutely. And, you know, occupation orders should be enforced and prosecutions should follow. I think there's a broader problem in society of ageism, which doesn't help. And you're right, there is a problem of young people who should have flown the nest staying at home far too long.
Well, I've got to say, I do actually think that domestic violence is a cancer on society and needs a lot more time, effort, resource and everything invested into it. Lots of you have been getting in touch about working from home. Philip says nobody seems to mention, Michelle, how incredibly long it takes to call any big organisation these days. He says, I've spent almost 3 weeks trying to call my bank, and after 20 minutes each time, I just gave up. I completely hear you, Philip. I think a lot of organisations have used COVID as an excuse, quite frankly, to provide incredibly poor service. The best response to give those companies is to take your business elsewhere. That's my advice. Lots of you getting in touch saying, lots of you getting in touch talking about the whole not answering the telephone thing. Ronald says, be careful what you wish for, because if you can work from home, your job can just as easily be outsourced. Lots of people saying that as well. No, you need to hold your thoughts, Peter.
Great
hold
timing.
your thoughts. Yes, you can tell me it in the break, and I'll be the judge of where. In fact, I'll let you know if it was an interesting thought you had when we come back. But I do want to take a quick break, and when I come back, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about. Schools, whether or not they should be trying to stop kids eating meat, or is that overstepping the mark a little bit? And a topic I am very passionate about indeed. And if you know that, if you watch this programme often, you'll know this by now already. The whole kids vaccination thing, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland now are all saying that 5 to 11-year-olds, healthy 5 to 11-year-olds, not the vulnerable ones, will very soon be getting the COVID vaccine if you want it. Would you give your kid this vaccine? If not, why not? And if yes, tell me why. I'll see you in just a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, let's talk schools, food and kids, shall we? Parents are outraged, I tell you, at Barrowford Primary School in Lancashire. Why? Well, apparently they're trying to force pupils to become vegetarian to help save the planet. Basically, long story short, what they've done is they've cut out meat in their canteen school meals, and now they're saying the parents as well should not put meat in their kids' pack-up. Let's broaden it out. Let's not make it about one particular school. Let's make it about the concept in general. Laurie Labourne-Langton, do you think schools should basically take the decision that kids are going to go meat-free whilst they're at that school?
No. Changes to diet are an example of a small action that you can take to have big results on your health, on wider society, less reliance on the NHS and on the planet as well. And that's absolutely the case. But there are a whole range of ways of doing that, and particularly in a school setting, ways in which you can involve the kids more. There are so many examples around the world in the UK of schemes in which you get the kids in lessons where they learn about food and the food system, and then you give them the opportunity to help cater their menu, engaging with local groups, farmers and other things. And that provides such a more enriching experience to the children and embeds more lessons, you know? So I think the approach is not the right one, but the issue at heart is that we do need to change our diets and we'll get benefit from them.
Peter?
Why do we need to change our diets? Why?
Because we have high rates of diabetes and obesity in this country.
But that's not the reasons are being given. The reasons are being given is that this will somehow help the climate.
And one of the major causes, one of the major emitters globally is the food system. One of the major things that degrades soils and destroys biodiversity is the way that we produce food globally. One of the biggest factors driving all sorts of negative issues is the food system. We have to make changes. That is not something that anyone is debating here.
Well, it is, actually. I'm debating it entirely, and I would hope that even a primary school teacher, and definitely you, Laurie, as an environmental advisor, would know that climate change isn't that straightforward. There's been reports and articles all this week on global greening, which you guys all choose to ignore and not talk about the positives that will also come through climate change, and already are. You choose to ignore those. And here we've got the vilification of parents who are apparently poisoning their kids by putting red meat in their lunchboxes, which I think is outrageous. Kids, as it is, are faddy and fussy enough about food, and parents have to think, whatever can I get them to eat until they grow out of their fads, and should be left to make those decisions. And schools should get on with teaching truths, not fussing over what's in their lunchbox.
The fact is that I would agree with that. Look, this is obviously political and it's ideological. There's just no getting away from it. I mean, I know you didn't want to talk about this particular school, but I think, as I understand it, I believe, you know, this particular head teacher also is very anti-discipline. She doesn't like kids being shouted at, things like that. It goes with the territory so much, you know. This all goes with the territory. And the idea that somehow or other you can impose your beliefs, actually, which is what this is. When I was last on, actually, with you, Michelle, we were talking about some teacher getting kids to write nasty letters to Boris Johnson.
Yeah, we were.
I mean, what is happening in our schools? You know, this is just... with this particular example, I mean, kids need meat to grow healthily. You know, they need to. It should be something that you make a decision on, maybe when you're older.
Sorry?
It's very easy to take one example and think that the whole world has gone mad and that every school is imposing some dictum on the kids about what they can eat and cannot eat.
I don't think I said that.
No, and I'm not accusing you of that either. I'm saying that we, in this particular instance, and the issue of food and how we can understand what's good for us and not, and how the food system works globally, we should give the kids the opportunity to absorb in the latest, best information about that, and then to cater the menus at their schools accordingly. And there's many schemes out there that people should go and look up which do this. And on the particular point around the climate crisis, the way we grow and distribute food globally is having a very large negative impact on the environment, and that's a problem that we've got to sort out.
Well, there you go. And by the way, do you eat meat? If not, why not? Is it climate related, or are there other reasons? I'd be fascinated to know your thoughts on that. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now, I want to talk to you about the breaking news that happened just before we came on air, actually, about the expansion of the vaccine rollout to healthy 5 to 11-year-olds. Now, I've got to say, this topic, it really does bring out a strong reaction in me. Glynis has messaged in, said, "Be quiet, Michelle. We are all well aware of your opinion on vaccinations for children. That's just what it is, though, your opinion. Stop continuously voicing it." Well, honestly, Glynis, no, I won't actually. I will keep voicing it because there's something inside me that tells me that this is wrong. It makes me so uncomfortable, this topic. I'm referring, of course, to the 5 to 11 healthy 5 to 11-year-olds that are now having the vaccine rolled out to them. We had a doctor on earlier on one of the earlier shows, Dr. Veena Babu. Let's listen to her thoughts.
As a GP, I would still recommend all parents to do your own research, read around the topic, look at the sources, and once you feel confident, only then put your child forward to get the vaccination. On one hand, you could look at it as getting the vaccination can help build their immune systems for when they grow up, so they'll have a better chance of fighting the vaccination. But I still think more data needs to be collected before we can confidently say and recommend this to everybody.
OK, there you go. Well, before I just throw this open to my panel, because I know that there's disagreements on this panel as well with it, and I think this is a very immersive topic, and I think it does stir up a lot of feelings. My point on it is we're coming to the tail end of this situation, fingers crossed, she says. Omicron has been proven now to be much milder. And if we cast our thoughts back to the 3rd of September, the JCVI did a statement about vaccinating healthy 12 to 15-year-olds. They clearly said in this, it was all about the potential harms and risks and benefits. What they were saying is that whilst the benefits from vaccination are marginally greater than the potential known harms, it acknowledges there is considerable uncertainty regarding the magnitude of the potential harms. The margin of benefit, based primarily on a health perspective, was considered too small to support advice on a universal programme of vaccination. So what then on earth has changed? Because to me, the thing that's changed is actually we're in a much better position, because back then the kind of prominent strains were much harsher than Omicron. Laurie Labourne-Langton, I think you've got a different opinion to me, so I'll start with you. But I genuinely find this uncomfortable. I don't know what's driving this.
I mean, I think that parents have got the option in which they can vaccinate kids from 5 to 11 is OK, that they can have that choice. I think there's a deeper issue here, though, which goes to how trust is very low in this country. And I think it's something that cuts through all the discussions that we ever have about this, right? I think the majority of people in the country understand the need to act as an individual for the benefit of the collective, right? So that's for most people, particularly over a certain age, to get the vaccine, to abide by the public health rules at times, right? But trust is so low in politicians and government for understandable reasons that I wouldn't, for example, be in favour of vaccine mandates, because I don't think we have the level of trust that we can impose that kind of measure on people. And indeed, if we had high levels of trust, we wouldn't need to anyway. So I think, fair enough, if parents want to get vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds, that's OK. But we need to understand that at every point we come up against these issues, the deeper issue here is that we need to start to rebuild trust in this country, because in government and politics in this country, because what happens when there's a next crisis, or goodness forbid, another pandemic? If we've got even lower trust, we're not going to be able to deliver an effective public health response.
I hear what Laurie's saying there, Kerry, but to me it's not about trust. It's about the basic sentiment that these vaccines are not risk-free. And I feel that that seems to be massively overlooked in a lot of this. There are risks attached to these vaccines. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine, well, first and foremost, I wouldn't give my kid this vaccine. I just wouldn't. There's not enough long-term safety data. I do not feel that my child would be at risk of serious harm from this, so it would be a definite no from me. But where there is a risk, surely this needs to be looked at. I mean, for example, there's a letter here, an open letter that 100 healthcare professionals have written and published. They're alerting, they're writing it to Chris Whitty and Sajid Javid, saying about the whole kind of increased excess mortality, and they're talking about an increase in all-cause mortality in males aged 15 to 19 since the COVID vaccine rollout commenced in that age group in May 2021. These 100 medics are calling for a pause in this, yet we're pushing ahead. Your thoughts?
I don't think it makes much sense. I mean, personally, I don't see a big risk factor in the vaccine. But what I would say about vaccinating 5 to 11-year-olds is why? Why on earth? These are healthy kids. You know, they're not dying from COVID. They're not the spreaders either, these little children. So it just seems to be a very, the pandemic is on the wane. So what on earth is the point of this? It just seems a very bizarre, performative set of health measures and quite unnecessary, frankly. I think that would be my main objection to it. And on your point, Laurie, about trust, I think, yeah, there is distrust, and I think it's, born of reality. But I think there's a bigger problem, which is that the government and politicians don't trust us. They don't think much of ordinary people. They don't think we can be trusted to make wise decisions. And so parents can't necessarily be trusted and must be told, you've got to, get these vaccines, which I can see happening next. And why? And there could also be another damaging consequence, which I think we've already seen, which is pushing the COVID vaccine at kids, it's already happened with teenagers as well, is undermining the more important vaccine programmes. The vaccines they do need to have are being displaced, and also fears are being resurrected around them as well, which could be quite dangerous and damaging.
Well, you're quite right, because the other day I couldn't actually get my kid one of the vaccines that he did need as part of his childhood immunisation programme. The reason I couldn't get him it is because the appointments were going to boosting 18-year-old kids. Bonkers. Peter, your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I would agree with Kerry there. The facts with COVID really didn't change very much, actually, from the beginning, when you look at it. And kids were never in that much danger. The idea that now this is being rolled out tends to suggest to me that some people just can't let this go. And I think we see it in other aspects, in mask wearing, in things like that. I think that a lot of people kind of had a taste of power and they don't like to give it up. I think really when Laurie says about trust in society, and how it's got to come back, well, you've got to remember, during this pandemic, the government was taking advice from someone who, over the past 20 years, had consistently got figures utterly wrong, right? So why should they trust him? I think Sage, and you correct me if I'm wrong, with the last variant, said that 6,000 people a day could die or something like that. No wonder people aren't going to trust. It's not just politicians. I mean, you're talking here about certain scientists too. So, I mean, basically, trust has to, you can't just have it by virtue of what you do. It's good, you've got to earn it in a way. And you can lose it very quickly. I mean, and I think your point, Kerry, when you say about them not trusting people's own judgment, that's been the story now for years, not just on COVID. And anyone who is a veteran of Brexit will also recognise that, I think.
Well, I think one of the key points as well, and I read it out at the start, is Lewis got in touch and said, if we don't get our children jabbed, will we be able to travel abroad for our summer holidays? I mean, I do actually believe each to their own, and I perhaps don't give that impression when I talk about this subject, because it does create a strong emotional reaction in me. I'm not quite sure why, but it does. But I can't comprehend why a parent would give a child a vaccine that has no long-term safety data for an ailment and illness which, the risk of your child having serious harm is so small, just so that you can go on holiday. I can't fathom it. I do appreciate we are indeed all different, but I just can't fathom it. Anyway, speaking about the subject of vaccines, regular viewers will know that we created the Outdate the Mandate campaign. If you're not aware of it, it's about the NHS mandate for the healthcare sector, not just the NHS, it goes way beyond that. Well, you may be aware that the public consultation is out, your opportunity to give the government your sentiments, your thoughts on whether or not there should be a mandate. And that consultation closes tonight at 11:45. So if you're passionate about that topic, either way, whether you support it, you think it should be in place, or you're against it, you think it shouldn't, do make sure you check out that link. It's on my Twitter feed at Michelle Dewbs. Speaking of my Twitter feed, I asked you, do you trust the police? It's split, actually. 48% of you are currently saying that yes, you do, and 52% of you are saying that no, you don't. So quite a split on that. Again, I think there's a split on the whole kind of vaccine situation as well, whether or not you would vaccinate your child. Each to their own. I do make my points very clearly known on that. And again, lots of you writing in about the whole working from home thing, that sentiment about people not answering their phone or being ineffective, should I say, when it comes to answering their phone is another one that's coming through very, very strongly. What else are you guys saying? Let me see. Because there was a couple there that flashed up that I thought to myself, I must read out, because one of you, John, said to me, Michelle, you say you're going to read out emails and then you never do. So, John, I've just read yours out. So there you go. Lots of conversation about the vaccines. Robert says, stop moaning and get the vaccine. I'm 67, I've had 3 jabs and I feel like I'm 25 years old again. Goodness me, I mean, what is it that you've been injecting yourself with there, Robert? Goodness me, you're 67 and you feel like you're 25. Well,
fantastic.
I know, okie dokie. Well,
Something else.
Yeah, well, that is interesting. Lots of you on that whole meat thing, you're saying teachers should concentrate on teaching kids the basics. Many don't have the ability for basic arithmetic. Handwriting their own name is a struggle for too many as well, says Michael in Edinburgh. He thinks get back to kind of teaching. Is it the 3 R's you used to say? Yeah? The 3 R's rather than telling people whether or not they can have a beef burger. Still lots of you writing in as well about the whole kind of vaccination thing. It really does divide opinion. So do let me know. The JCVI have published their kind of sentiments around that, so you can have a read of it yourself. I'm sure we will discuss it again on another programme, but that, for now, is pretty much all we have got time for. Dewbs, when I was at school, we didn't even know the teachers' politics. He says, why now? Is it seems to dominate teachers' politics? Do you think it dominates schooling too much? Let me know your thoughts. That is all we've got time for tonight. If you ever want me to pick up a topic and get stuck into that on Dewbs & Co, email me gbviews@gbnews.uk. But for now, you have yourselves a fantastic evening. Thank you to my panel. Thank you for you at home watching and listening. By the way, don't forget you can listen on the radio, so if you're going out, get us on in your car. You'll enjoy it, I promise. I'll see you tomorrow, 6 till 7.
Hi there, I'm Ada McGiven. 36 to 48 hours of severe weather is expected as storms Dudley and Eunice hit the UK. Disruption likely fairly widely, especially on Friday as Eunice hits, and dangerous wind speeds in places. It's through the evening that Dudley brings its strongest winds this evening and overnight, with outbreaks of rain associated with it as well. Wind gusts of 70 in places, 80 miles an hour, risk of disruption. Showers following the main area of rain, those falling as snow over 200 metres for northern England and Scotland. And it's a blustery start to the day on Thursday. Some sunshine first thing, but further showers are expected, particularly for northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then by the afternoon for parts of Wales, the Midlands and the southwest. Away from the showers, there will be some sunny spells, and the winds are moderating through the day, less severe by the afternoon. Feeling cold in the north, 5 or 6 Celsius for much of Scotland, 10 or 11 for the south of England and South Wales. But it's through Thursday night into the start of Friday that Eunice rapidly develops in the Atlantic and then pushes towards the UK as a powerful storm, bringing potentially worse impacts compared to Dudley. A quiet end to Thursday, some clear skies and lighter winds for a time, but don't be fooled. During the early hours of Friday,